Hey everybody, we're back for the illustration masterclass today, and we are going to talk about sketching, the importance of doing a good sketch, and why sketching matters in your illustration work. This is a hugely important topic, of course. A lot of people, like I was just saying a moment ago to some friends here on YouTube, they like to really just jump right into the painting and the fun stuff, right? The final line art, whatever it happens to be. If you skip this very important step, which is drawing a good sketch, you're going to probably wind up doing way more work than you would if you had just taken your time in the sketch phase. And I'm going to explain how to do that, going through a rough to a tighter sketch and then clearing the way for your final art and making that so much easier. A pal of mine on Twitter was just saying this week when I announced this topic that he said 99% of the work that he does is in the sketch phase. And that might sound like exaggeration, but honestly, I'm kind of in the same camp, I have to say. There's so much that you figure out with the sketch, and then if you do it right, the final illustration, the pieces of the puzzle just fall into place, which is really neat. So I'm going to share my screen here in a moment, and we're going to look at some stuff and talk about why this works, okay? So this is a rough that I did for a postcard mailing a long time ago. I'd say maybe like 5 years ago, I want to say. I had this idea of this frog holding up a lily pad umbrella kind of deal, and he's dressed nicely and whatnot. And so the thing that I worked out in the sketch was where I was going to put the text on the back of the postcard. The front of the postcard was a different image. It was actually this tiger, which I'll show you here. Here we go. And this tiger illustration was going to be on the front of the postcard, and then the back of the postcard was going to be this froggy frog here. And so I had this area for my text. So I was working out the layout, trying to size things, trying to figure out like how to make things move around that text box, right? And then working out this this sort of leaning in of the frog, which I just found to be a neat thing. I just wanted that energy of that sort of forward momentum, as if the lily pad perhaps is floating along and he's moving with it. Anyway, but I want you to look at the final illustration and see that it's got a lot of the same elements of the sketch, doesn't it? And if I were to overlay the sketch, let's just do that for a moment. Take that sketch and just pop it up on top here, and I will knock back the opacity and then size it up accordingly. So I want to just show you how much work from the sketch basically made it into the final drawing. You're still going to see some changes. So like, for example, you're going to see some proportional changes here. I'll knock it back just a little bit more. You still should be able to see it. You're going to see that I popped this leg here even further back in the final painting to really stretch that diagonal. Change some of the proportions in the frog's body. I mean, if you think about it, I actually kind of took everything and skinnied it up just a hair. I could even take the sketch and kind of squeeze it this way, and you'll see evidence of that if I were to change it that way, right? A little bit of proportion change in the hand. But the main thing I want to show you is how much of that sketch stuck with me all the way through to the final, okay? Apart from this change in the angle of the cane, and that was for stability, right? I wanted to make that more stable so it doesn't look like it's going to fall over. Look at the body, the general proportions of the body, the pose of the body, okay, the placement of the lily pad and so on, the shape and size of the lily pad umbrella and its handle, so to speak. All of these things really pretty much remained. And the only thing that wound up changing was, as it turned out, I didn't wind up using this at the back of the postcard. I was going to use it as a print. And so what I did to work out that space here was to then put another focal point, like a lesser focal point, if you will, in the distance, which is that windmill right there, okay? But the bones of the sketch, and more than the bones, I'd say the bones and muscle of the sketch remain in the final painting. And that really just made my job so much easier. By this point, it was really just kind of filling in, what was already there with some color. And I've talked to you before about how to simplify your color palettes in Photoshop. If you go back and watch some of my other master classes You'll see some good techniques for that that are borrowed from traditional media, so you don't feel overwhelmed with the 64 million colors that you can choose from by using the color picker. And I employed that method here by using these pinks and greens and blues that came from a very basic palette that I made of primaries, and then mixed color from there. So anyway, the sketch really served its purpose and made the rest of it kind of an easy ride on the way out. Now I want to show you another illustration here for a client. This was for a beer label, Foothills Brewing, and they had this idea of a train, and the name of the beer was Festival Express, based on a train that traveled around Canada and I think parts of the northern United States for a concert series back in the 60s. And they had this idea of the train having a guitar perhaps on the front of it, or something having to do with music and peace, which was this peace dove here. So I got some reference of the kind of train that was used for this trip. You can see it up here at the top right. And let's hide that for a moment, and let's take a look at what we're looking at here. What I'm looking at here is a mechanical. So they sent me a very basic mechanical of the layout of the label that would be printed on the beer cans, and the safe area for the art, which if you look at this very thick black line here, it's telling me, hey, this area, don't go above here with anything important, okay? We might not see it when you print the art on the can. So I knew that I had to keep the elements, the main elements here, and I knew that about this much of the art would be visible on one side of the can. You know, can is of course cylindrical. As it turns away, we get to the back side here where we have all the information that'll be what's required, you know, for any beer cans with description and FDA notes and whatever else. But this sketch, I want you to see how this turned into the final. Okay, so I then moved to this cleaner line art. So right away, you can see very little has changed at all. If I just go back to the sketch for a moment, all right, look at the shape of the clouds here. So coming back behind that wing, right, and up and over, all right, and then here are the musical notes there. And let's come back now to the final, okay? Look at this, it's all identical. I really had to work out those shapes in the sketch to get myself to a place where things felt balanced. The only thing I had to work out here that wasn't in the sketch was making sure that this section here that has the musical notes that are kind of coming out of a ribbon of the train connect on the other side right here, so that if I wanted to, I could wrap the art into a cylinder and have everything still line up. So I made sure that the edges of the bushes on the right and left would line up, the hills would line up. These are very small, easy changes to make at the last minute once I've gotten everything in the center of the composition worked out. But without that sketch, can you imagine me just trying to dive in and start drawing this train and placing all these elements where they need to go and making sure there's enough space between all of these different sections of the illustration, the foreground, middle ground, and background, so that they read clearly and all that? No, of course not. That would have taken just forever. So just that quick rough, which led to the tighter sketch, which you see here again, right, is something that was invaluable to me for the process. Now, yes, some things did change. For example, I had some lines here to create some texture. Those to me wound up feeling very distracting. The sunburst on the train as well, I felt, it was kind of getting a little bit too busy, right? So just removed that, cleaned everything else up. And then finally, for the very last stage, when I added the color, I actually went back in and did add a few little lines that you'll see here as I pull up the final art. Okay, I'll just zoom in here. You can see these little lines I put on the hills just to add a hint of texture and dimension right there. Knocked out the line art and made it a nice silver color, which if you look at the can, this is really cool. Those areas are actually the color of the can coming through from the label, which is a pretty neat process. They were actually able to print directly on the aluminum, which is such a neat printing process I'd never seen before. And so really the last stage was just figuring out the color palette, but being that this was vector art and these were all on separate layers, these different sections, we could just literally fill, tweak the color, fill some more, try a few variations, and then send it out the door to print. So made the process so much easier for myself, made the process easier for the client. The sketch was an essential part, of course, of the project. Just couldn't have made it work otherwise. I know I'm talking a lot. I want to say hi to some folks in the chat. Remember, if you're watching on YouTube or Twitter or elsewhere, you're going to be able to interact with me live at behance.net/live or be.net/live, monitoring the chat there so I can answer questions for folks and say hello. All right, so today we have lots of nice people here. We got Bruce, what's up, and Cody, and Be Creative, and Timothy, and Emma's here. Hello, Mercurial, nice to see you. Laura's here, how's it going? Tim is back, hey Tim. And Tunk is here, Golden Rose. All my old friends. Winish, what's up? And Robert, nice to see you. Hey everybody, thanks for hanging out, thanks for watching. Steve, this reminds you of a cool event in Canada in the 70s. I think that's what this was, Steve. If you had caught this a moment ago, I don't know if it's the 60s or 70s, but the Festival Express beer can was designed in memory of this music festival that happened on it, where the musicians were taken around on a train to different venues and then playing little concerts there. I think, what's her name? The woman who died very young. Big loud voice. Help me out. I think she was the same age as John Belushi when he died, and I think it was sadly a drug thing. She sang that song Bobby McGee and all that. Can't remember her name. Shame on me. Anyway, yeah, you can see the final result. All this from this rough sketch right here. Alrighty, and there's something else I wanted to show you here, and I'm gonna pull that up right here. Let's see. So I had the great pleasure of designing a character for it was going to be a mascot for and logo for and just packaging everything. This character for a product. This product is still being developed. I can't talk about where exactly what this is going to be ultimately, but I wanted to show you the process and how rough I really work. If you look at this drawing right here, trying to figure out a general head shape for this mascot character, which of course is an alligator, okay, as you can see. And the processes that I went through to arrive at this streamlined shape that I felt pretty good about. And so let me just jump back here and show you, this was the first place where I landed with the head and body and so on, which was much more correct in terms of it being real alligator anatomy, okay? So we're looking here at an actual shape of the head of an alligator, much closer to how an alligator's head really looks if you look at the placement of the mouth and how the inside is shaped and whatnot. And so this was a starting place because I was looking at reference of alligators, okay? And so if you look here, of course I've got my this head-on view right here, okay? How closely that is tied to this. Right, so I was just trying to figure out what does an alligator's head look like and start from there. But then I very quickly departed from that, and I took so this is still similar, but I'm starting to box it off more. Okay, this is more of the squared off kind of approach, right? So this is a slightly more rugged, but starting to design the head shape a little better, okay? And noticing, if you see the note here I'm making for myself and for the client, that the 3/4 view reads the best. It's easiest to see the head. It's easiest to kind of get what's and then I started to cartoon it up a little bit. So I'm still keeping this square kind of shape right here out for the cheeks of the head, but I wanted to start to play a bit more with transforming what is more of a realistic depiction of the head into something more stylized, okay, and more of a cartoon kind of approach. And you can see how that's working there. You can also see, if you look closely, some of the rougher lines I have in the back there that I had erased away. So these are still rough. Then I moved into this where I wanted to take that same body and then build it out, that head part of me, and build it out into a body and see what kind of proportions we might have. Of course, this is an anthropomorphized alligator, AA, right? And so I think that was starting to come together. But this is where I wound up in the end. You can see it's a great departure from where we started. If you compare this oversimplified head, okay, a really simple shape, okay, to where we were here, right? There's a dramatic difference. So a lot of streamlining going on of the forms, to really get to a simple statement about what this is, all right? And then there's an evolution that happens here where I moved on from that to try and open the mouth because it was more fun, right? As I open mouth equals party time, bigger expression of fun. And I then came back and I went backwards a little bit. Instead of sticking with this over-cartooned, over-streamlined look, I came back and put a little bit more shape into the brow so that it could be more expressive and also slightly more alligatory, if you will. Added a line there. And this is just, it's a small step, but this shape is just a little bit more of an alligator shape. So that's where that wound up going. And then if you look at this, this is where we all wound up. This is the final illustration. And you can see, of course, that I've got, if I just group all this together here, you can see that we now have the line art, okay, which is really, really tight, really cleaned up. And that was what I was aiming for. So zoom in on that so you can see all the work that goes into making sure that those lines are really, really clean. Okay, this was all drawn in Photoshop, by the way. I think a lot of people would be surprised by that. I do draw this super clean art actually in Photoshop. I don't work in Illustrator or anything. I draw it in Photoshop using my Clean as a Whistle brush, which is in the Mega Pack, and then I open it in Illustrator and I use the path generation tools that they have in there, so I can take that line art and trace it into vector art. But again, let's just take out the color there, and you can see what that looks like. Of course, I provide a nice guide for the client so they know what these colors are. But this is where things wound up for this final project. And all of that came out of working with those original sketches to get to a point where everyone felt good about the design. Now, I could never just sit down with an inking brush and start drawing something like this and making it work. It just wouldn't happen. So again, the sketches are vital to making this work. Okay. Alrighty, so let's close all this out. And let's close this. Let's talk about how this would work in a real assignment. And so I thought, okay, how about this? We're going to have a poster. They're commissioning a poster. They don't yet know if it's going to be horizontal or vertical, but this is for the fly fishing folks in Virginia, let's say, and they're like, hey, we want to do this poster about fly fishing in Virginia. It's a tourism thing. We want to get people out to fly fish. And they say, we're going to have a title that says fly fish in Virginia or Virginia fly fishing or something along those lines. We have a little logo for the tourism center for this, and we're going to give that to you. And can you please work it out so that we have a nice, beautiful illustration of a subject fishing, and we need to have room for that title. And I say, okay, fine, I can do that. And how would I do it? Well, would I start at 18 by 24 inches, 300 DPI, and just start drawing the final line art? No, of course not. I want to show you how you go through really, really rough ideas and then refine them and get to a point where you have something that you can present. But you work through these ideas to get to the result for yourself more than anybody. So first, starting with laying out these basic elements, we know that we have a type element, we know that we have an image element. So the first things I could say, all right, I could have type maybe up here, and maybe it has some kind of a nice curve to it, okay? So I know that this is going to be my type, and of course the letters would sit in here, right? But I'm just giving myself a sort of a box to place that type in. I say, all right, that's about where that's going to live, okay? And then that leaves the rest for the image, right? So I say, okay, how do I want to handle this? Well, these are thumbnails, right? I don't want to work with a lot of detail or anything. I want to say, okay, I could have a a subject here, and they're standing in the water. And maybe because of this arc that we have here, I could follow that with the rod maybe. So the rod comes out this way, and then we have like a nice over and over and like something like that, right? Or I could go this way. Try and create a nice pattern for that line coming off the rod, right? So here's the person standing in the water, they're fishing, and then I just have the water coming towards us, and behind the person maybe you got some foliage. Okay, I haven't yet figured out what that's going to look like, trees and whatnot, but they're sort of framing the person in this U kind of shape, right? So here's our focal point, this person. You take this and like maybe slide it down about here, so it feels more sort of centered, I guess. But we could just have water coming towards the person. It could be like these really beautiful sort of patterns, and most of the illustration could be about the patterns that we create these in the water. Like that could be a really neat element, and it leads your eye towards this figure right here. And so we're keeping this is pretty simple, right? So maybe I want some trees coming in, framing things on the sides, right? So that everything just kind of fits into place. And there's one idea, right? Another idea, we could say, all right, well, no, we're gonna put the type down here. We're gonna anchor it with type, and then we're gonna figure out what to do with the figure. And maybe in this instance, it's more of like somebody throwing. Like we sort of have like an anti view maybe. So the arm is reaching out. And this is sort of the view we're getting right here. So we got our type down here, and then we've got this going out in the distance, and there's a little fly there. And then, like, you know, there's always these little stones. So the little stones are coming towards us, and the type will lay over some of the rocks in the extreme foreground. Okay, so there's another idea like this. And then you could have like some nice foliage kind of dipping up and over this way. So all this is like the shade of the tree limbs, right, with the foliage kind of coming over that way. So here we have this nice diagonal movement this way up to the rod, which is going to go off in the distance, and then we see that nice pattern like that, that S-curve that kind of takes us from this corner of the composition down back this way. Speaking of composition, I did a 4 or 5 part series on composition early on in this series of illustration masterclasses. So go check that out. And you know, some of the stuff I'm talking about right now, it'll reinforce some of that action. All right, so there's that. I'll just clean that up a little bit, my eraser. There's another idea, okay? So this could work, this could work. Maybe we come back here and we try another one on the top. We just say, okay, that's just gonna be nice, big type here. Oh, and it's important to get that little logo in there. So maybe here we have the little logo on this one off to the side. Maybe here it's like sort of tucked over or overlapping this little bit of type right here. You know, it could also live down there. We don't know yet. All right, and then for this one, yeah, what the heck, I'll throw it down there. Okay, and for this one, keep it simple. Maybe it's like a long, far away kind of deal where we get a low horizon. Okay, and like some stones here in the foreground. And then we just keep moving further back, and then right out here we have that silhouette, really tiny, of the person standing in the water and casting out this way. And maybe this one's all about like some beautiful trees like this, and we see like how pretty they all are. They're reaching out just behind that type and everything. So we're weighing it this way, we're weighing on the right side like this with the trees and whatnot, okay? Some little plants and this and that. And there's our hero figure casting out, okay? And then maybe you put like some Appalachian, you know, hills and mountains over here, okay? And then just make it a beautiful like skyscape kind of situation back there, okay? And then they say, hey, look, give us a couple of horizontal options. You say, all right, well, here are 3 verticals, right? These could work for you. And then for horizontal, you say, all right, well, let's look at the ideas we already have and see how we could sort of take these and make them work for a horizontal. So like this one, okay, you could definitely take that and we could do this. Oops. I wound up drawing on this layer. I didn't mean to. There we go. So let's clean this up a little bit. Just make sure that tucks in there nicely. See, you could just stretch this one out like that, and then you could have like the type kind of borrowing from our first one. Right, there's the type in this nice big box right there. When I say it's living in a box, I don't mean it'll actually be in a box. It might. I mean, it could be like in some kind of a ribbon shape or something. Who knows? There could be some containment device for it. But what matters is that we're getting this nice composition here working for us. Get some more trees out there in the distance. Okay. Maybe another rock right there. But that could be a really nice one. We just take this figure probably and move him out a little bit more to the right so that he feels, there we go, like he's more part of the action. Get him down into the water. Over here. Okay, so that could be a nice horizontal solution right there. Maybe some birds up there, right? Who knows? And then for this last horizontal, you know, if they're looking for 5 options, this client, you say, all right, let's think about it. So here maybe we could get creative with our type situation. Maybe we do something like some kind of type in a shield or like some kind of shape here. No, I tell you what we'll do. Here's this. Let's do this. Why don't we make a sort of a shape like this, which is more kind of like a fish kind of shape. It's an oval, but it's got pointier ends. And maybe we use that for the type. Could even be a fish shape if you wanted it to be. Like we could actually go so far as to take the last bit here and maybe there's like something like that, you know, type. I don't know, that's looking kind of corny. Change my mind. This is why I love sketches. You don't have to commit to anything. Just go for it and see what you come up with. But we could use something in the corner with that shape. Some kind of containment. So there's the little message we have right there. There's our little logo. And this one, you know what we could do? We could be more like, have the person here. And some nice like rocks and stuff up here and trees, and the trees and everything else cover this whole area. And what we do is we get closer to the viewer. And this opens up towards us this way. And then here we have like a nice big tree trunk right in the foreground like that. You know, maybe another one here. And so what we're doing is we're leading the eye from here down to our messaging, okay? I don't like this pill shape. I'm just gonna stick the type down there and see how it works. We're just gonna imagine that we have a nice block of type right here. Okay, with that little logo. And we're just leading the eye from up here down to there. And we'll have the fly come towards the viewer. Ah, I got it. Check this out. Let's do this. Fly's coming towards the viewer, and then you actually see the fly like in great detail. So it's like extreme foreshortening kind of a thing. So here it comes right towards us. And then we're gonna actually have it overlap our messaging. So here's our fly, and we're going to take this and have it just pop right on top of that message like this. Blah, 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 blah. There's that little logo. And there you go. So that one took a minute to sort of resolve, but I think that could also be kind of a neat one. Look how rough these are though. Really, they are. Look from a distance, it's like there's nothing about these that's tight. Okay, so I look at these and I say, all right, these are all fine. I'm probably more into the vertical ones. I'm not sure, but I would probably say I like this one and maybe this one. This could be kind of interesting actually. Yeah, I don't know. So what do you all think? Is let's label these and see if you all have an opinion about which one would be worth taking to another level of finish. So just go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Remember, if you're watching on YouTube or Twitter, go ahead and pop over to be.net/live so I can see the comments and see what you think about these, and can weigh in on which one might be worth taking to a tighter sketch. Looking at some comments here, people are talking about a documentary about, is it about fly fishing? Oh, y'all are talking about that train way back, yeah, earlier in the broadcast. All right, let's see what you think. Great job, thanks, Carlos. Elena says 125. Steve says 1, 2, 5. Sherry says 2 and 5. 2 and 5. 5 and 1. All right, I'm gonna just take. Let me just see how many times I see the number 5 come up. 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. 2, 2 and 5. 2 and 5. 2 and 5 are winning out right now. 5 more than any actually, which is interesting. So, cool. Okay. So I guess we're going horizontal. We're going horizontal. All right, well, let's see how that works. This one kind of, I had some ideas about that could work, I thought. But why don't we do this? We're gonna take this one and there it is, there it is. All right, we're gonna get that sized properly. And let's just flatten that. Alrighty. We'll hide all these. Make it very faint. And I'm going to use a slightly lighter color here just to separate that from our background. And let's take a look at this. So, reference. I can't stress this enough. Reference is so important. I know that there are some artists out there who have this incredible store of knowledge in their brains of just they've seen something one time and they just can remember it and they can draw it. These people are not normal. That is not normal. You really have to look at stuff a lot to get familiar with how it looks and how it works. I know nothing about fly fishing. This topic popped in the head because a pal of mine, Dave Hagee, really loves fly fishing, and I just thought about him the other day, and I thought, oh, fly fishing. So really, it's as simple as that. That's how I came up with the idea, and so I had to look, and say, okay, one thing I like is his hat with this little feather in it. It's kind of cool. Probably wouldn't be able to see that in the poster with the figure being as small as it is, but maybe not. This little, interesting fanny pack idea is something I've never seen before. I'm not sure what the deal is. Yeah, these are just normal gloves, I guess, but the fingers are exposed for control. And then I noticed a lot of people wearing these sort of overalls. Hard to see here because these folks don't seem to be doing that. But I've seen these overalls that people wear when they're fly fishing, and I like that as well. I like the separation of the arms because that could be a cool graphic element where you have the arms being a separate color and then the torso and legs connecting to make that simple shape really easy to read from a distance. So I like that. So I like a hat. I think a hat's going to go in the drawing for sure. These overalls and some kind of a pack for holding stuff. Then you look at the rod. It's in this picture right here. It's really long. That's a long fishing rod. I'm going to assume that's kind of like just the norm for fly fishing. Usually you have a longer rod. So yeah, these are all really helpful. And I'm not doing a particularly tight sketch right now. It's going to be semi-tight, but just to see all that stuff really, really helps me to get a better drawing. So let's start here with our foreground. We're just going to get some better shapes here and start to play with what that could look like. Okay. So might have some tall grassy elements here. Okay, mix it up a little bit, keep that interesting. A couple of little bits bending out. Okay, maybe some taller elements. And then here, we're going to have that tree. I'd love to have some interesting stuff happening with the roots of the tree. So maybe there's like some exposure there. Nice big rock here. Notice I'm keeping all these lines kind of moving in this direction and following this rhythm. Okay? Because that's important. I want to make sure that we're moving in a direction this way. Okay? So maybe the roots here of the tree are going to do something. I haven't decided how that's going to all look, but get that tree to just pop up this way and then over that way. Maybe I'll split it right there. Have it do something interesting like that. Okay, but that's going to be our big solid tree in the foreground. And I think all this stuff, I'm going to tone this in a minute. It's all going to be dark, okay? Because we want to highlight this. So these foreground elements are going to be dark, okay? Just so you know what's going on. Actually, I don't want it to have too much activity there. I do want to have some, but I want to make sure that this area is going to take care of a lot of the landscape component there for middle ground. I don't want to really bring it in over this way too much. So stones and rocks are really going to be an interesting thing to add interest. So I want to make sure those are happening here. Let's get this a little rounder towards the bottom, because as we get closer to the viewer, we need to have rounder shapes. And as we get farther away, we need to flatten them out at the bottom as our perspective, you know, as we get out in the distance. So here's going to be our person standing. Those overalls. And they're going to be leaning out with the one arm up and out towards us. We could do that, or we could do that. And I think this makes more sense. Or it could be like coming towards us, but that's hard to do that kind of foreshortening from such a great distance. And I don't think the silhouette will read as clearly, so I'm tempted to take the person, slide them down over here, and then get that arm up and out, and then have plenty of room for that rod. Like that. And then let's see what we can do with that shape. I don't know what a fly looks like, and I'm gonna look that up for reference, but I know they've got some, they're different ones. And something like this kind of is enough to communicate what that might be, so. Here we have our little area for the type. Blah 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 blah. And maybe here's that little logo. Put our little horizon line, so to speak, right there. And we let our landscape just kind of move around that. Some more rocks and things on this side. So this is kind of like the rocky shape area. And there's a lot of pretty stuff we could do with those shapes when we get to the final. And that could be nice. Alrighty, now let's make sure this person has a head. It's kind of a good thing to have. Just coloring in the arms and separate color for our overalls. There's that little pouch there that they wear with the supplies in it and all that business, right? And just as in that first sketch, I can imagine there being some nice opportunities for some pretty patterns happening in the water. Like that. All right, and then we're gonna get into just some general foliage kind of stuff over here. Some trees, some brush and everything else as we get away from the rocks and into the regular landscape there. Okay. Now remember, all of this can change, but what's great is we're setting ourselves up, even now at this phase, for success, right? By addressing all these things, not in any great detail, but in enough to sort of start figuring out what needs to happen when we do get to that final art. All right, so what we haven't figured out yet is maybe like what's happening in the background. So I think some light shapes hinting at some trees and some hills and everything behind the fissure. So like there's a hill there and another one right there, right? So that really helps us understand the landscape back there. So now I can hide this and we'll go ahead and eliminate what we don't need. And on a separate layer, I'm going to go ahead and just really quickly tone some stuff. Okay, and that'll be it for today. But I think we got a lot done. I think this was a good exercise. You could sort of see how this stuff all comes together, right? All right, so this is that gouache. This is one of the gouache G brushes. This is the gouache G wash brush. All right, so I'm just gonna take this whole area and just darken it. See this? So we know this, hey, this is not the main area I want you to look. It's important. It's for context. And as a design element, it's nice and it's necessary, right? But it's not like the most important area, right? And we're here. Just gonna add some tone right there. A little darker as we get inside all those bits right there, okay? But as we get out to the rocks here, I'm gonna leave that kind of bright. It's gonna be catching some light. You have a shadow here and there, you know, where a tree is casting a little shadow or whatever. And now here, of course, we want high contrast. We go super dark right there. Here's our person. This background element here, all this stuff is going to be pretty light. All right, and I think probably what'll happen is this area here is like in the sun, and as we get closer to our sign, Okay, maybe what happens is we get into, as we get further away from where the person is casting, maybe this area is in shadow. Maybe we know that there are some like trees like casting shadows all in this area here in the foreground. And so that starts to get a little darker as we get down this way. And that allows that sign to really pop, right? So we can then look at the balance of things here. We can go, okay, get that, let's get that lighter. So that's all that stuff that, you know, in the way back is gonna be a little lighter. Sky is gonna be the lightest thing of all, along with the highlights on the water here. Okay, I can darken this up a little bit. Darken this up a little bit. Make sure we frame things. We know where to look. Get a little darker under here. And there you go. So you could take, there you go. You say, hey, send this to the client and see what they think. That's a good day's work right there. No way on earth I'd try and draw something like this without a sketch. You saw we went through the thumbnailing. You saw we went through this stage of figuring all this stuff out, right? So let's check it out. Like here's where we were. Hold on a minute. I'm gonna hide that. Okay. So that's where we were right there. We had these other sketches, little thumbs. We knock those in. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We decide, hey, this composition could work. Now I want you to look at this composition, which is really just chicken scratch, right? Cha, 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 cha. A couple of little lines here and there. We understand what's going on because we talked through it, and we as the artist know what I'm looking. I know that's a fisherman. I know that's a line. I know that's a gonna have some text. I know that's a little landscape with some rocks jutting out from the right into the left. I know this is a big tree or some trees in the extreme foreground. That's all I need to know to get me to that, which is a much clearer read, right? I mean, this is, I could show this to somebody and be like, hey, what do you think's going on? And I'm pretty confident they'd say, yeah, it's a person fishing and, you know, yeah, it makes sense to me. I got it. I got it, Kyle. So, yeah, you know, another 10 minutes on something like this, and you'd probably be in really good shape. You'd really be cooking. And you know what you can do then? You can say, hey, I feel like I'm ready to go just one little step further, and I want to grab some color and just throw it in there and start, you know, with multiply, start playing around with color, you know, knock in my sort of value for the sky or whatever, have that peeking through here and there between the trees, right? Little bits and pieces there. That could be some nice little shapes, some nice little shapes right there, some little cutouts in between the trees there, okay? And start working on what would happen with the water here. Maybe what we want to do is we want to go kind of crazy and like use some yellows here in the areas that are highlighted. I don't know. Just be like, that'd be kind of a neat idea, like the water catching the sunlight or something like that, right? Our whole palette could change. We don't know. It could be some yellow in the sky to kind of reflect that, so we understand the connection there. Anyway, You get the idea, folks. It's not that hard if you take the time to go through the process of creating a sketch, right? Don't skip that step. Don't mess around, right, with the final art and just think you're gonna nail it and get it working. You're not. If you do, you're amazing. Anyway, that's that for today, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next week, and until then, have a great weekend, and remember to do some drawing. Squeeze in some drawing there if you can, okay? It's a healthy thing to do. But I will see you later. Everybody take care of yourselves, take care of each other, stay kind, and talk to you soon. Ciao for now.